Good morning and welcome to the Workforce Observer. We are pleased to have with us today Bettina Schaller. As President of the World Employment Confederation, WEC, and SVP Head Group Public Affairs of the Adecco Group, Bettina is a passionate labor market advocate and activist influencing the world of work globally. Welcome, Bettina. We are very happy to have you here.
Thank you so much for having me, Subhadra. I can't wait for this conversation.
Great. The WEC, it represents a vast global network of workforce solution companies and trade association. This is a two-part question, really. Can you just briefly explain the organization's role? And then what do you see as its most significant contribution to shaping the changing world of work? And maybe it's not one contribution, it's two. That's fine,
Thank you for that. No, indeed, and thank you for the opportunity to put this spotlight on the WEC, on the World Employment Confederation, which is the advocacy organization of all private employment services companies and federation across the world. So the members are from the one side, the big global corporate companies in that workforce solution space, and they classically come from the staffing space. But the other members are the national federations, which again are the advocacy bodies at the country level that deal with setting up the appropriate framework in labor markets for, private employment services to operate, to provide their solutions, and then overall actually for, I say, really regulating flexibility these days. So again, an advocacy organization where the focus is on picking up what those major issues are out there in the labor market, globally, regionally, but also at country level. And in driving down the complexity behind us. This is really to your second question around what the contribution is in shaping the world of work.
Right.
It is so these days, again, complex to figure out how do we actually provide solutions to, the issues of talent scarcity, to the issues of the need to re-upskill, to that whole piece around the impact of AI and digital in the world of work. And this industry, so the companies, the members of World Employment Confederation are the experts. They are the ones who deal with jobs and employment and work on a daily basis. And therefore, this organization is committed to bringing that know-how and that insight to the table, mainly with policymakers, who again are creating the framework. So it's about taking responsibility and co-creating that world of work.
Wonderful. And so, for instance, American Staffing Association is a member of the WEC, but SIA is not really a member. They would be more someone you have a partnership with, correct?
No, that's very well said. So there are those national federations. Currently, there's around 50 national federations. So indeed, in the United States, the ASA, the American Staffing Association, is. We're actually looking to bring in further national federations. The key for us here is compliance. It's the standards. And this is a very important topic, and I'm sure you will, ask me where our focus is, particularly right now and this year. It has to be on that. It has to be on the fact that anybody who deals with jobs and with bringing people to the world of work does that in the most ethical and compliant way. And this is what the members of World Employment Confederation commit themselves to. But then you're right. There are a number of partners that are in this broad ecosystem of the world of work. And of course, the SIA, Staffing Industry Analyst, is one of those partners, which we're very grateful for. SIA is notably very strong when it comes to certain labor market data. World Employment Confederation also has its data, and we've been able in current years to work together to combine that data force, which is key Because coming back to that policy making, we need to base that on data, right? On the right visibility and then interpretation of what those labor markets look like. And that's where that partnership between us, notably, there's other aspects as well, but is very appreciated.
So what is your focus? What is you think? Well, before we get to focus, what do you think is the most significant contribution till date? If someone had to ask you that the WC has done with regard to,
well,
I guess
to me,
jobs?
it is that ethics and standards piece. It's actually the workforce solutions space is incredibly crowded and incredibly fragmented. It is one where
Yes.
there's a lot of players. There's a lot of businesses, a lot of companies. You have thousands in many countries, and so
Right.
unfortunately, a lot of bad things happen as well. A lot of
Yep.
non-compliant things happen, right?
Sure.
Which is
Sure.
unacceptable. And so what
Sure.
WEC again is ruthless about is to set those standards, the codes of conduct.
Right.
One major element in that space is not to charge a fee to workers for
Right.
the services that they receive, and that is actually enshrined in a convention of the International Labour Organization. It is the famous
Right.
Convention 181. And so
Right.
again, there is no fee charging of workers, and all WEC members will abide to that. Too many companies out there are charging workers, and so
Right. Right.
this is where we're looking to just slowly, in a way, clean up the labor market, which also means actually formalizing the labor market. In too many countries, there is informal work, and we know that we are one of the conduits into a formal world of work.
Just to clarify, because I'm very familiar with India and the whole
Yes,
informal labor market
yes,
and stuff. So, for instance, staffing companies they place somebody at a client site, right?
correct.
They do charge a fee. That is okay. That fee you're saying is all right. I'm assuming it's the fees they charge when they are taking services for visas and stuff. Is that what you're referring to? Can you just clarify when you say
I
what
mean,
fee?
actually, again, the staffing companies should not charge the worker. Everything should be paid for by the client. And that
Okay,
includes if there are fees relating to visa, to bringing somebody over. Then the
right,
client company that is looking to attract that talent should be
right.
covering that. It's
So
actually
you're
interesting you
saying
mentioned that example, because I know that for many workers, and mainly in the
yeah,
migrant worker space,
yes, yes,
they are suspicious if they don't have to pay. They are
right, right,
used to paying a company that will, inshallah, take them to that other country and provide them a job. But actually, it should be
yes,
exactly the contrary. They should be
right,
suspicious of those companies, right? Because again,
right,
it should be
right,
the client who places the demand. And this is what our industry is about. It's a demand driven industry. So we get active once we know there is the demand. And in
right,
today's landscape of talent scarcity, I can tell you the demand is there. So the
right,
client company places the request, the demand, and pays for it.
right,
And then
right.
the staffing companies, the workforce solution intermediaries, then facilitate the entire process.
Right. And whatever fee there is, the client company will pay the staffing
Correct.
company. So
Correct.
yes, I think we hear all the time, especially in the informal space, in India, for instance, in the Middle East, all the, things that
Correct.
happen. So it's a good
Correct.
clarification.
Correct.
So,
Correct.
let's talk about what you think is for this year. What are you going to be focusing on? Your priorities? Any particular initiatives, and is there anything you're particularly excited about as well?
Yeah, I mean, what a year and what a time it is to be. Well, actually, I think anywhere, the transformation, but the
Yeah,
labor market and anything related to the workforce. So for WEC,
yeah, yeah,
among the priorities we have is again to be a partner in that whole regulation on AI, tech, and
yeah,
digital in the world of work.
yeah,
There's a lot of activity. there's a lot of activity in the European Union space on AI. There's the EU AI Act. There's a lot of activity in the OECD space as well, which is looking at the role of AI in the labor market. Of course, we know that many countries, even in the United States, in China, etc., with different approaches, but regulators are looking at that. Either actually dropping it on its own or intervening as it is. And again, we know that we have massive insights and arguments on how AI should be applied. What happens on the algorithmic management, for instance. We've got all examples about positive cases. We know about the negative cases. I personally, I am involved heavily on the whole responsible AI usage because clearly we as an industry need to do everything we can to avoid that harm is being done to workers as they use tools and workforce solutions that have AI built in, right? We need to absolutely find ways to avoid discrimination as well. These days, we know, sorry for the expression, but garbage in, garbage out. So it's the way you construct those chatbots and those algorithms, of course, depends very much on that. That applies to other industries too. But again, here the recipients are, workers at the end of the day. It's about job opportunities. So we need to make sure. So again, WEC, in the various committees around the world and on the platforms is going to be involved there. Another big highlight, again, is just around our agenda on what we call diverse forms of work, which is to recognize on a government level that you need to build frameworks that allow for multiple contracts so that a worker has the opportunity to be, not only full-time employed or self-employed, but, there are other contractual flexible solutions that also carry a security element with it. So for us, this is the diverse forms of work agenda. And there again, we're very involved in the gig economy conversation, the platform work economy conversation. So some pieces there. It might sound a bit abstract, but I can assure you at the end of the day, this is direct impact on workers out there and actually on companies, right, who are looking to access talent, but who in many countries have issues again because sometimes regulation doesn't allow for it.
Right. No, I've been in the industry for a long time. And right from the beginning, the talk has always been, we need more classifications, not just contingent worker or employee or contractor. What about, like now you brought them up, the gig economy worker. Can there be different ways to handle it? So, I know that, you are you lead dedicated work streams like responsible AI, and you did talk a little bit about it, but what key challenges stand out for you around this? Is there any key trends or challenges that stand out for you personally around responsible AI?
Well, it's that discrimination potential, right? It's the fact that we need to focus so much on making sure that the ethical, the very compliant, the trustworthy pieces are there. It's the fact that, for instance, one focus I have right now is the actual technical groups and then the testing groups, right? There's more and more companies that see that obviously their digital teams need to be diverse, for example, right? This is a piece. But then very often then the teams that then do the testing are not, so things fall through the cracks there. So this is just where, as we grow more mature and gain more visibility, our focus is. And then, of course, that there's mitigation measures that are taken. When you identify a situation, that you then actually, shut down a chatbot or actually, build in safety measures again. So that's where we're actively currently, and obviously I'm part of one, company in this industry. So I get to follow and really co-shape that environment closely. So I know that this is happening, and that is where the focus needs to be in my perspective right now.
Thank you. You're also SVP of Public Affairs. So, how do you navigate the dual responsibilities of that role? Is there not a conflict, or do you not find a conflict sometimes because you're also trying to advance a broader mandate of the WEC?
The nature of my mandate is actually shared by many peers who also represent WEC members. So if I look at the executive committee of the Confederation, there's currently 6 members. I have 2 vice presidents. One represents or comes from Manpower Group, so another WEC corporate member. The other one is a representative of a national federation, which is the RCSA, the Australian Recruitment and Staffing Association. And then the other members represent the UK Federation, the REC, Randstad, actually. And then we have a representative of the South African Federation, the APSO. So already in the executive committee, you see that in the board, that's 28 members. Again, they all represent different members. And so I guess this question, comes to everybody, but we all, I know it. We share that immense belief and commitment that each of the companies that we represent, of course, benefits immensely and relies immensely on this common engagement for the industry, on bettering the environment for the industry. And then all these companies also share the belief and the commitment of wanting to contributing of the role and the responsibility that all of us have in terms of social impact. And I am the first one to congratulate any peer, that drives a new initiative, that helps, a business partner, that creates opportunities for thousands of workers. This is exactly what they should be doing, what we should be doing. And therefore, I personally actually see absolutely no conflict of interest. Because I do first keep this industry in mind, and then of course, the other interests.
Oh, that's great. Thank you. So, I know you work closely with ILO, OECD, World Bank. Can you talk about how you work with them, just briefly? And can you share any specific instance where this collaboration with one of the policymakers really influenced global workforce policies? I think it's super interesting and it'd be great to know.
No, absolutely. And I mean, the organization you just mentioned, starting with the International Labour Organization. And if I come back to my previous example about this convention, so the International Labour Organization is the standard setter in the world of work. I mean, it's the oldest UN organization. It was set up in 1919. And it started with the basics, the fundamental rights and principles at work. So we've been incredibly fortunate to, over the years, build an excellent working relationship with the ILO. So we're one of the constituents. Now, the ILO is organized as a so-called tripartite organization. Again, the only one in the United Nations where not only governments, are at the table, but employers and unions are also at the table. And so World Employment Confederation is part of that employers group, which is led by the International Organization of Employers, the IOE, where again WEC is a partner of. So I think this is a very good example of how we then bring in on all those agenda items that relate to work, which at the ILO happens to be the main topic actually. But we bring it then that know-how on very technical question. Maybe one example I can give you. Last year was a big discussion on apprenticeships at the ILO.
Yes.
It was the first time that there was a global, let's call it guidance. It's a recommendation that was issued on how governments should work on creating the frameworks for apprenticeship models to
operate.
enter
Right.
that political environment. Of course, in many countries, that discussion has already been going on. But here we talk about the 200 countries roughly around the world, It's
Right.
really about, do consider apprenticeships as one of the most important ways for young people and also older people, to acquire work readiness skills. And so this industry is absolutely on top of that topic, actually provides apprenticeships in many countries via the agency apprenticeship contract as well. And so we were very involved in those negotiations, in the drafting of the texts, and were able again to contribute to that outcome.
That's cool. That is cool. The HR services industry, it's been instrumental in providing security. It's adapted in turbulent times, such as during the pandemic. What lessons has the industry learned, do you think?
Well, I mean, the pandemic, that's probably that is probably one of the crises where we can hopefully say the chapter is closed, right? Because all the other,
Gosh, yeah.
turbulent times we're still in. You know what? I think that the big lesson and
Yeah.
just reassurance, in my view, came again that it's about putting the human at the center of it all. And
Yeah.
I know that sounds ominous, but actually, to come back to the ILO in 2019, they celebrated 100 years and
Right.
came up with a big report and a declaration as well, and
Right.
introduced two notions. One, that there's a need for a new social contract of how stakeholders interact in a labor market. And the other one was about the need to be human-centric. So shift away from policy making that would be system-centric to that human-centric. And so for us as an industry, that was shortly before COVID, of course, 2019, a crisis like COVID showed that this is absolutely the key. And that's why, for instance, in the COVID crisis, which was, of course, a healthcare crisis, our focus as an industry was very much on the health and safety of our workers, of the agency workers specifically, but then all workers. So we built an entire guidance on how to ensure workplace safety, and then also mental health and safety. And so that was just a reassurance of that role that we are playing.
Oh wow! So is the mental security? Is this the first time that it's come up, or has it come up before in the past? Because the mental status of the worker is so important. But is this something which is new?
No, well, my reading is that there was an understanding that working conditions and workplace health had been covered, right? But now, during COVID and since COVID, the importance of considering workforce vitality, and again considering mental health, has risen right up to the top of the minds of policymakers as well. It's definitely on the
That's good
minds
to
of
know.
many company representatives, but also policymakers. And one of the reasons is that there are thousands of people missing in the labor market because they are ill, they are sick, they are suffering from effects that go back to COVID notably, and it can be really, again, actual still long-term effects of COVID, but it can also, and it can be related to the fact that now you also talk about it, surely, but I do see that since then there is an emergence, and that has an effect on labor markets, on the actual employment numbers, and therefore there is this awareness that measures need to be taken to protect workers also from a mental health perspective.
That's great. So, really, really quickly, how is WEC, I mean, you could call it a challenge of working with things like digital transformation, skills gap, and, absolutely changing workplace expectations?
I mean, if you mean as an organization itself, I mean, it's of course it's going through the motions of any organization that needs to drive its own transformation, right? I mean, the WEC is an NGO, I guess, and has its head office team based in Brussels, and obviously the digital transformation of the organization itself, which was absolutely spurred by COVID, is in full swing. I've just come back from the World Economic Forum annual meeting in Davos, where the big talk is about all these agents and obviously about creating efficiencies there, and how you can use all these programs and algorithms to increase your own productivity as a human within the organization. So, I mean, these are things we're slowly starting to look at as well within WEC. We're looking as well, talk about the skills piece that you mentioned. The big talk out in the labor markets is skills-based assessments, right? And hiring people based on skills. So it's a shift away from certifications and roles, looking at skills. So the same within the Confederation as well. We're starting, to carve out what are the skills of the people that are involved there. So the same piece. And then workplace expectations, again, as any organization, we need to, in line with a culture, we need to figure out how to create that best healthy environment for our own people, and to do that so that they can be as productive as we admittedly need them to be. And that's why we're there also going through the motions of being an employer that is thinking about that. Look, the bottom line is I don't think there's any organization out there that does not think about it. And if there is one, then they are very likely losing people by the day, or then there is a culture which is shared by those people working there, which makes it feasible. But the need to adapt and individualize the workplace, make it technically interesting is clearly here.
And as you do that for the internal WEC organization, are you also doing that for the rest of the world? Are you providing guidance?
I mean, this is where, on a policy level, we're involved whenever it makes sense. Again, our focus is heavily on driving the efficiency of labor markets, on making sure that anything that is linked to flexibility is done in the proper way. And flexibility is about workplace, work time, the way you work, and the contract that you work under. So indeed, WEC is involved in those threads.
Now, if you had to give just one message to global leaders about the role of the HR services industry or, private employment agencies in driving prosperity, what would it be?
Wow. I think if I take your question from the angle of what drives prosperity, then I actually land very quickly at the fact that it is people that drive prosperity.
Right.
One of the big conversations in our days, I think, is do you spend more in your tech and digital capabilities or in your people capabilities? So, where do you put the emphasis? And so, my message to leaders is very objectively do make sure that that you do focus on the people, on the talent. And if you do so, then work with the appropriate partners who can help you maximize, again, the benefits for you as an organization, but mainly make sure that those people in your organization are encountering the best possible framework. So my message from an industry perspective is good on you if you're working with us already, because we're here to support you. And if you are not yet, then make that a priority for 25, because the likelihood that your biggest roadblock as an organization to grow and to be productive is talent is very high. And so you will want to work with experts like us to untangle that.
That's cool. Any takeaways for the industry that you would like to share?
Takeaways for the industry? It's keep that ethical compass up. It's again a very fragmented industry. There's lots of players who want to make good business, which is great, but keep that moral, ethical compass up, because again, it's about people.
Oh, that's great. Thank you so much for your time. It was a great conversation. I really enjoyed your insight.
Thank you.
I appreciate it.